Slow. सर्वशास्त्राधिपीयूष सर्ववेदैक सत्फल सर्वसिद्धांत रत्नाख्य सर्वलोकैक तत्प्रद सर्वभागवत प्राण श्रीमद्भागवत प्रभो ललित्वान्तो विदादित्य श्री कृष्ण परिवर्तिता परमानंद पाठाय प्रणवशक्षरायते सर्वदा सर्वसेव्या श्री कृष्णाय नमस्तुमे अपेक बंधु मत्संगिन मद्गुरो मन्महाधना मन्यस्तार्क मद्भाग्य मदानंद नमस्तुते असाधु साधुतादाय नतिनी चक्षताकर आनंद कदाचित नाम प्रेमना हृत्कंठयो स्फुरा वंदेहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सर्वनरनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सर्वानुगता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमामि विष्णुपादाय कृष्णाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाय विचारणे निर्विशेष शून्यादि पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत वेदांत श्रीवासादि गौरव भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Okay, let's resume. Fine. Oh, जिज्ञासितम् अधीतं च ब्रह्म यत्तत् सनातनं तथापि शोच्यस्यात्मानम् अकृतार्थ इव प्रभो. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? You have inquired about the eternal supreme Brahman, and you have also attained an understanding about the nature of that absolute truth. Despite that, you are lamenting. Why? The Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra compiled by Sri Vyasadeva is the full deliberation of the impersonal feature of the absolute. Meaning, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in impersonal terms. Meaning, he's not this, he's not that, he's not material in that way. You do not find in the Vedanta Sutra a description of the primary names, forms, qualities, pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. It covers the subject of eternity, and the methods are scholarly. So there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. So why should he lament? 5. Vyasa Vacha. Astyeva me sarvamidam tvayoktam tathapi natma paritushyate me tanmulam avyaktam agadha bodham richamahe tvatma bhavatma bhutam. Vyasadeva said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction, for you are a man of unlimited knowledge, due to your being the offspring of one, that is Brahma, who is self-born, that is without mundane father and mother. So Sridhar Swami remarks that this verse means that my self is not satisfied in the self, my body and mind are not satisfied. So I'm asking you about the root cause for that dissatisfaction because it is unclear. In the material world, everyone is engrossed with the idea of identifying the body or the mind with the self. As such, all knowledge disseminated in the material world is related either with the body or with the mind, and that is the root cause of all despondencies. This is not always detected, even though one may be the greatest erudite scholar in materialistic knowledge. It is good, therefore, to approach a personality like Narada to solve the root cause of all despondencies. Why Narada should be approached is explained below. 6. Achyutanamrita.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhu, in text 4, when Narad Muni is saying Prabhu to Srila Vyasadeva, is it like sarcasm or just as a respect? Because he is spiritual master in this case.
No, he recognizes that Vyasadeva is the Supreme Lord. He's an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, and that he's engaging in this pastime of behaving like a sincere disciple, seeking guidance. Therefore,
Okay.
6. Savai Bhavan Veda Samasta Guhyam Upasito Yat Purushah Purana Paravaresho Manasaiva Vishwam Sajatyavatyatik Gunaira Sangaha. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. He had previously said, Vyasadeva had told Narada Muni, you have unlimited knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Now here is a detailed description of that in text 6 and text 7. Paravareshaha. That is that word. Para-avaraishaha. One meaning of it is the controller of the cause and the effect. That means the controller of subtle material existence and gross material existence. Manasaiva sankalpa matrena gunaih krutva vishwam srijati ityadi. He creates, maintains, and dissolves the material universe using the three modes of material nature simply by his mind. Manasa eva, only with the mind. That means simply by his sankalpa, his resolution, simply by willing to do so. A person who is sent person engaged in the service of the Lord is the emblem of all knowledge. Such a devotee of the Lord in full perfection of devotional service is also perfect by the qualification of the personality of Godhead. 1 minute, wait. Suddenly beginning to think this is what? Section 16. So this already 12. On the 15th, I should begin a review. I should not conduct a regular class. On the 15th of August. 15, 16, 17 should be review for Unit 1, close to assessment. 18th of August will be the first set of assessments. I'm contemplating having for those who are in Mayapur and those who wish to do so, I'm contemplating having a closed book assessment in writing, written closed book assessment. I'll see how it can be worked out. A person who is 10% engaged in the service of the Lord is the emblem of all knowledge. Such a devotee of the Lord in full perfection of devotion service is also perfect by the qualification of the personality of Godhead. That means he's also perfect by possessing the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, as appropriate. As such, the eightfold perfections of mystic power, Ashtasiddhi, constitute very little of his godly opulence. A devotee like Narada can act wonderfully by spiritual perfection, which every individual is trying to attain. Even Narada is a 10% perfect living being, although not equal to the personality of Godhead. 7. From paryatannavka ivat lokim antascharo vayurivatma sakshi paravare brahmani dharmato vrate snatasya me nyunam alam vichakshva. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds. Like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. As such, you are as good as the all-pervasive super soul. Please therefore find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. So you travel all over the three worlds means you can see everything. By the strength of your mystic power, like the pranavayu, like the life airs, you are inside all living creatures. In that way, you perceive the functioning of their intelligence. I have been absorbed through the regulated principles of yoga in the Supreme Brahman. I have also been absorbed in the regulations of Swadhyaya, scriptural study. By following the vratas, vows that are required for it. And in that way, I have been absorbed in the study of the inferior Brahman in the name of the Vedas. The Vedas are called Shabda Brahman. The Supreme Brahman refers to Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please rationally deliberate about what is the deficiency in me. Now, Yagyavalkya has stated what are all the different activities that are required. Ijya, worship, achara, proper conduct, dhamma, control of the senses, ahimsa, non-violence, dana, charity, swadhyaya. Swadhyaya refers to study of the Vedic scriptures. Then karma refers to one's varna dharma or ashrama dharma. For women, it is three dharma. Amongst all of this, the supreme dharma is that by which one can see the Supreme Soul through an appropriate spiritual process. Transcendental realization, pious activities, worshipping the deities, charity, mercifulness, non-violence, and studying the scriptures under strict disciplinary regulations are always helpful. 8. Shri Narada Uvacha Bhavatan Nudita Prayam Yasho Bhagavato Malam Ye Naivasau Na Tushyeta Manyeta Darshanam Khilam. Narada said, you have hardly broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. Without a presentation of the factual glories of the Supreme Lord, that means the spotless glories of the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not satisfied through cultivation of knowledge of dharma and so on. So that cultivation of knowledge is what I consider to be the deficiency. That is what is lacking. The idea is that he did not present factual information of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is almost not spoken. It's not that it's not spoken in Vyasadeva's writing, but it is almost not spoken. The eternal relation of an individual soul with the Supreme Soul, Personality of Godhead, is constitutionally one of being the eternal servitor of the eternal Master. The Lord has expanded himself as living beings in order to accept loving service from them. And this alone can satisfy both the Lord and the living beings. Such a scholar as Vyasadeva had completed many expansions of the Vedic literatures, ending with the Vedanta philosophy, but none of them had been written directly glorifying the personality of Godhead. Dry philosophical speculations, even on the transcendental subject of the absolute, have very little attraction without directly dealing with the glorification of the Lord. The personality of Godhead is the last word in transcendental realization. The absolute, realized as impersonal Brahman or localized supersoul, Paramatma, is less productive of transcendental bliss than the supreme personal realization of his glories. The compiler of the Vedanta Darshan is Vyasadeva himself, yet he is troubled, although he is the author. What sort of transcendental bliss can be derived by the readers and listeners of Vedanta if it is not explained directly by Vyasadeva, the author? Herein arises the necessity of explaining the Vedanta Sutra in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam by the self-same author. So there's nothing wrong with Vedanta Sutra as such, but it is just that it has not been sufficiently explained. That is the deficiency. 9. Yatha dharmadayascha muni varyanukirtita na tatha vasudevasya mahima hyanuvarnitaha. Although great sage, you have very broadly described the 4 principles beginning with religious performances. You have not described to such an extent the glory of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. If Vyasadeva were to argue, no, I have simply described the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead everywhere. I have certainly done it. Then Narada Muni says that no, you have very broadly described the goals. Dharma, pious credits, artha, wealth, kama, sense gratification, moksha, liberation. We have also described the means by which one can attain these dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So you have not primarily described the glories of Lord Vasudeva. You have described, but you have not primarily described. The prompt diagnosis of Sri Narada is at once declared. The root cause of the despondency of Vyasadeva was his deliberate avoidance of glorifying the Lord in his various editions of the Puranas. Glorifying the Lord means glorifying the Lord directly, as we find in Srimad Bhagavatam. He has certainly, as a matter of course, given descriptions of the glories of the Lord Sri Krishna, but not as many as given to religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. These 4 items are by far inferior to engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. Sri Vyasadeva, as the authorized scholar, knew very well this difference. And still, instead of giving more importance to the better type of engagement, namely devotional service to the Lord, he had more or less improperly used his valuable time, and thus he was despondent. So these were the thoughts of Narada Muni. From this, it is clearly indicated that no one can be pleased substantially without being engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is clearly mentioned. After liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity, etc., one is engaged in pure devotional service. This is called the stage of self-realization, or the Brahmabhuta stage. After attainment of this Brahmabhuta stage, one is satisfied. But satisfaction is the beginning of transcendental bliss. Shanta. Then comes Dasya, Sakya, and so on. One should progress by attaining neutrality and equality in the relative world. And passing the stage of equanimity, one is fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the instruction of the personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmabhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samah sarveshu bhuteshu. Then mad bhaktim labhate para. Then bhaktiyavam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha tato mam tattvato gyatva vishate tadanantara. So there's a process of how one attains parabhakti, transcendental devotional service, and how one attains the supreme goal, that is the kingdom of God, to continue engaging in parabhakti in full perfection. In our language, Gaudiya Vaishnava language, we call it sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti. Ramanujacharya's language, it's parabhakti, paragyana. No, it's called parabhakti, paragyana, paramabhakti. Corresponds to the three stages, same three stages. But parabhakti is what you come to after Brahmabhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati. This is the instruction of the personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita. The conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahmabhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, Narada recommended to Vyasadeva that he, Vyasadeva, should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. This would cure him from gross despondency. Mohan Radhapati Guru.
Hare Krishna. So, in Puranas and other scriptures, Vyasadeva presented minimized bhakti, or that I wanted to ask. So
generally, yes. Generally.
But it is correct only because is it not like, because maximum people are not interested in this goal, so most of the scriptures would be like that only. So like according to Adhikar, you used to say about Adhikar Uchit Shiksha. So since most people are about after that, so he has presented that only. So what is wrong in that?
But that does not satisfy anyone. That's a fact. It does not satisfy. It may be what is currently needed, but that does not give. It does not bring one to that status now. See, satisfaction means Brahmabhuta prasannatma. That prasannatma status comes only after one comes to the point of being Brahmabhuta. So anything lower than that may be what is required for them, but it does not bring them to the point of satisfaction. That is the point. The whole question is, why am I not satisfied? So Vyasadeva has, out of his mercy, identified himself with the souls of this world as a teacher. So he is pointing out that if you want to be satisfied, you need to come to that point. You need to come to the point of pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and progress to the perfection of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Until then, okay, whatever is required. There are different stages. Superior to adharma is dharma. Fine. Superior dharma is nothing but karma dharma, the platform of karma. Superior to that is jnana dharma. Superior to that is yoga dharma. But until you come to the point of bhakti dharma, you are not satisfied. If you don't come to the point of pradhanibhuta bhakti, you are not satisfied. There are some questions here. How to come to Brahmabhuta stage? How to come to Brahmabhuta stage? That's there in Bhagavad Gita itself. It comes before. You can see the verses that come before Brahmabhuta Prasannatma. It talks about the method by which one comes to that point. That is one way. Another way is Yat Karoshi Yad Ashnasi Yad Juhosi Dadasi Yad Yad Tapasyasi Kaunteya Tad Pushvamadarpanam. along with Manmana Bhava Madhokto Madhyaji Mal Namaskara. Basically, these two things have to be done. And in one, you perform pious activities as an offering to the Supreme Lord in Krishna consciousness. In the other, you engage in direct Krishna consciousness. Manmana Bhava Madhokto Madhyaji Mal Namaskara. So in the lowest stage, one is primarily offering these pious activities in service to the Lord while executing the form of direct bhakti. In the intermediate stage, one spends most of his time engaged in fulfilling these instructions, Mamana Bhava Madhokto Madhyaji Mama Namaskuru, and the remaining time he offers his pious activities to the Supreme Lord. In the highest stage, he only engages in these activities of Manmana Bhava Madhokto Madhyaji Mama Namaskuru. He does not engage in the other activity. And of course, in all three stages, he does not touch adharma, does not commit offenses. Step by step, we have to take advantage of the association of more advanced devotees while we attempt to increase our engagement in devotion service. 10. न यद्वचश्चित्र पदम हरेर यशो जगत पवित्रम प्रगृणीत गर्हिच तद्वायसं तीर्थमुशन्ति मानसा नयत्र हमसा निर्मन्तु शिक्षया. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. He points out that expertise in presentation on subjects other than the glories, spotless glories of Lord Vasudeva is simply inferior. There are subject matters pertaining to Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, which is different from the subject matter of the glories of Lord Vasudeva. Then there are ordinary subject matters. Ordinary subject matters about the dealings of this world. That can also be presented very excellently. But that's completely useless. It is just good for nothing. That is pointed out here. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha at least is within Vedic Dharma. It tries to move you up. Or another way of seeing it is the spotless discussion of the glories of Lord Vasudeva will necessarily pertain to the subject of pure bhakti to him. How to attain love of God, love of Krishna. Inferior to that is that subject by which one can attain liberation. Inferior to that is how to attain Trivarga. Trivarga means Dharma plus Artha plus Kama. How I can attain pious credits and wealth and sense enjoyment. And that is, of course, superior to ordinary worldly achievements. So the Vedic scriptures which talk about Trivarga as presented by Vyasadeva, that is also pointed out to be within the inferior category of literature. Chitrapadamapi yadvacho harer yasho na pragranita tad vayasam tirtham kakatulyanam kaminam ratisthanam ushanti manyante. It is considered to be a place of prose. Kutaha. Why? Because the Hamsas, referring to the swan-like saintly authorities, whose minds are primarily in the mode of goodness. They do not take pleasure in such literature, such presentations, because they are residing in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the great Lord. Just as it is known that the Hamsas or the swans who wander about in Manasa Sarovar and who are residing amidst wonderful lotuses there, they will not take pleasure in the ditches where garbage is thrown, remnants are thrown, even if those remnants are of rejected foodstuffs, even if those rejected foodstuffs are of very interesting varieties. It is only a place where crows take pleasure. That is the indication there. Crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. The fruitive workers or passionate men are compared to the crows, whereas the all-perfect saintly persons are compared to the swans. The crows take pleasure in a place where garbage is thrown out, just as the passionate fruitive workers take pleasure in wine and women and places for gross sense pleasure. The swans do not take pleasure in the places where crows are assembled for conferences and meetings. They are instead seen in the atmosphere of natural scenic beauty, where there are transparent reservoirs of water, nicely decorated, with stems of lotus flowers in variegated colors of natural beauty. That is the difference between the two classes of birds. Nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities, and it is not possible to bring them up into the same rank and file. Similarly, there are different kinds of literature for different types of men of different mentality. Mostly, the market literatures which attract men of the crows categories are literatures containing refuse remnants of sensuous topics. They're generally known as mundane talks in relation with the gross body and subtle mind. They're full of subject matter described in decorative language, full of mundane similes and metaphorical arrangements. Yet with all that, they do not glorify the Lord. Such poetry and prose on any subject matter is considered decoration of a dead body. Spiritually advanced men, who are compared to the swans, do not take pleasure in such dead literatures, which are sources of pleasure for men who are spiritually dead. These literatures in the modes of passion and ignorance are distributed under different labels, but they can hardly help the spiritual urge of the human being. And thus the swan-like spiritually advanced men have nothing to do with them. See, first of all, it is a simple fact that if you want to influence others very deeply, if you want to impact them very deeply, there are different ways of doing it. You may make a production which is audiovisual, drishya, or it may only be audio, shravya, or it may be something which is written, like here. Now that which is written has a deeper impact, because to read and understand, you need to utilize your intelligence. So even amongst the society of non-devotees, those who want to have deep impact means, because we always utilize our intelligence to justify whatever we are doing. So to convince person's intelligence, it is more effective to produce written literature. Because written literature can be studied, can be read at the privacy of your time. You can read the various arguments, whatever. The arguments may be about sense enjoyment also. But you are able to read that at leisure, at your own time, in your privacy, without being distracted, disturbed. Therefore, it has the greatest impact. Therefore, there's a discussion about writings. There's not discussions about what kind of audio presentations you make or audio-visual presentations you make. Audio-visual presentations have an effect on the mind. Audio presentations have a deeper effect, but written presentations have the greatest effect. So here also we notice Vyasadeva talking about writing, Narada Muni also talking about writing. Such spiritually advanced men are also called Manasa, because they always keep up the standard of transcendental voluntary service to the Lord on the spiritual plane. This completely forbids fruitive activities for gross bodily self-satisfaction or subtle speculation of the material egoistic mind. Social, literary men, scientists, mundane poets, theoretical philosophers, politicians, who are completely absorbed in the material advancement of sense pleasure, all are dolls of the material energy. They take pleasure in a place where rejected subject matters are thrown. According to Swami Sridhara, this is the pleasure of the prostitute hunters. Kaminam Radisthanam Ushanti Manyante Akatulyana. The great saintly authorities consider these literatures to be a place fit for the crows, which indicates that it is like a brothel for lusty men. But literatures which describe the glories of the Lord are enjoyed by the Paramahamsas who have grasped the essence of human activities. 11. Tadbhag visargo janataka viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abadhavatyapi namanyanantasya yashonkitani yat shrinvanti gayanti grananti sadhavaha. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Even if you present the spotless glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without expertise in presentation of the words, still such a presentation is pure. Narada Muni conveys that in the current text. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men. Srila Sridhar Swami has noted, Yat Yani Namani Sadhavaha Mahantaha, the great souls, Vaktari Sati Shinvanti. If there are speakers, those who speak on topics which contain the holy names of the Supreme Lord, then they hear. Shrotari Sati Grinanti. And if they have an audience willing to listen, then they themselves speak. Anyadatu Swayameva Gayanti Kirtayanti. Otherwise, they themselves, if they don't have qualified persons who should be heard, if they do not have qualified audience who are interested in hearing, then what do? They sing and glorify the Lord for themselves. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had that policy that if you don't have anyone, then you should preach to the four walls. It is a qualification of a great thinker to pick up the best even from the worst. It is said that the intelligent man should pick up nectar from a stalk of poison, should accept gold even from a filthy place, should accept a good and qualified wife even from an obscure family, and should accept a good lesson even from a man or from a teacher who comes from the untouchables. These are some of the ethical instructions for everyone and every place without exception. But a saint is far above the level of an ordinary man. He is always absorbed in glorifying the Supreme Lord, because by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And as a result of propagating the transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. While preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend China has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. Which year was this? When was this? In what, 1959?
I think
Around that
61.
time?
61.
61. We have practically no business in the political field. Yet we see that previously there were both China and India, and they both lived peacefully for centuries without ill feeling. The reason is that they lived those days in an atmosphere of God consciousness. In every country over the surface of the world was God-fearing, pure-hearted, and simple, and there was no question of political diplomacy. There is no cause of quarrel between the two countries, China and India, over land, which is not very suitable for habitation. And certainly there is no cause for fighting on this issue. This is still continuing, no? Land which is primarily, primarily it's not fit for habitation.
Yes.
And it must be not just between India and China. There must be other places also fighting over geographical properties which are not really fit for comfortable life. But due to the age of quarrel, Kali, which we have discussed, there is always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. This is due not to the issue in question, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of men, emphasis to stop glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme Lord. End of emphasis. Therefore, there is a great need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. It is the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good, as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. Because India has failed in her duty by neglecting this responsible work, there is so much quarrel and trouble all over the world. We are confident that if the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam is received only by the leading men of the world, certainly there will be a change of heart, and naturally the people in general will follow them. The mass of people in general are tools in the hands of the modern politicians and leaders of the people. If there is a change of heart of the leaders only, certainly there will be a radical change in the atmosphere of the world. We know that our honest attempt to present this great literature conveying transcendental messages for reviving the God consciousness of the people in general and respiritualizing the world atmosphere is fraught with many difficulties. Our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail. And there will be so many literary discrepancies despite our honest attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration. And the leaders of society will still accept this due to its being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty God. When there is fire in a house, the inmates of the house go out to get help from the neighbors who may be foreigners. And yet, without knowing their language, the victims of the fire express themselves. And the neighbors understand the need, even though not expressed in the same language. The same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast this transcendental message of the Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. After all, it's a technical science of spiritual values, and thus we are concerned with the techniques, not with the language. If the techniques of this great literature are understood by the people of the world, then, by the people of the world, there will be success. When there are too many materialistic activities by the people in general all over the world, there is no wonder that a person or nation attacks another person or nation on slight provocation. That is the rule of this age of Kali or quarrel. The atmosphere is already polluted with corruption of all description, and everyone knows it well. There are so many unwanted literatures full of materialistic ideas of sense gratification. In many countries, there are bodies appointed by the state to detect and censor obscene literature. This means that neither the government nor the responsible leaders of the public want such literature. Yet it is in the marketplace because the people want it for sense gratification. The people in general want to read. That is a natural instinct. But because their minds are polluted, they want such literatures. Under the circumstances, transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam will not only diminish the activities of the corrupt mind of the people in general, but also supply food for their hankering after reading some interesting literature. In the beginning, they may not like it because one suffering from jaundice is reluctant to take sugar candy. But we should know that sugar candy is the only remedy for jaundice. Similarly, let there be systematic propaganda for popularizing reading of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, which will act like sugar candy for the jaundice-like condition of sense gratification. When men have a taste for this literature, their hankering after other literatures which are catering poison to society will then automatically cease. We are sure, therefore, that everyone in human society will welcome Srimad Bhagavatam, even though it is now presented with so many faults, or it is recommended by such an authority as Sri Narada, who has very kindly appeared in this chapter. Everyone in human society will welcome means everyone who knows about the value of Srimad Bhagavatam will welcome it, even if they cannot implement it in their own lives. So here is a question: what it means? What is the use of preaching to the walls when nobody is present? No, it is for our own hearing and chanting, so that we ourselves can be benefited. Yes.
So in the context of fighting, so now we see that Bangladesh fights. So I just want to ask you that in the Vedic time also, is there any persons who are doing like this? Means people are simply chopping the another people. They are behaving like simply animals. So what was the action that time? And
These
the
are all
people are
games of Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas were supposed to deal with the situations. This is going on all the time when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested himself. Then at that time, all this craziness was going on all throughout, all the time it was going on. Muslim invaders were always killing people, doing all these atrocities. So there are different kings who were dealing with that. They were generally failing in the northern parts of India. In southern parts of India, they somewhat protected it. So these things were going on. And you'll not find Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expressing his worry about it unless it is disturbing his mission. And it was disturbing his, only then he was worried. In Chaitanya Bhagavat, there is a description of when Chandkasi stopping the Lord's street Sankirtan. So then Lord Chaitanya and his followers, they marched to Chandkasi's house, destroyed the things outside the house. Chandkasi fled inside his house and he was trying to somehow survive. But outside they were creating a big mess actually. Lord Chaitanya's followers. And then Lord Chaitanya wanted to have Chandkasi burned to death and this and that. So many things he was saying. The devotees were not doing that. They fell at Lord Chaitanya's feet and they said that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, described in the scripture. And the Supreme Lord is described in the scripture as non-violent and compassionate. So how can you do these things? So then Lord Chaitanya said, cool down. So you'll find statements like that in Chaitanya Bhagavat, etc. Where Lord Chaitanya himself, he says, Savamshe Morimo, I will destroy them along with their entire dynasty. Yeah, but the devotees who were with them, they didn't say, fine, great, let's just take some weapons and go and actually do it. They didn't do that. Lord Chaitanya's mission is Brahmanical now. So Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that we don't follow the pathway of the Sikhs. S-I-K-H, Sikh. Sikhism came up as a violent reaction to certain atrocities. But you don't find that kind of reaction amongst Lord Chaitanya's followers. Now, that doesn't mean that when sufficient action is required, then the communities that are following Krishna consciousness will have to take appropriate measures. I'm not denying that. There's a need for it. But these are the Kshatriyas who handle it. The Brahmanas do not handle these things. And Lord Chaitanya's mission is led by Brahmanical followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Kshatriya followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have to submit themselves to the Brahmanical followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Vaishya followers will have to submit to the Kshatriya followers. The Shudra followers will have to submit to them. In that way, there's a proper gradation.
But like now in India also, if it happens, so how can we deal with it?
What you're supposed to do with that? What anyway can you do? Are you part of Indian Administrative Service? What can you do actually? If you say, I will also take a gun and I will go, okay, fine. Then it will become even worse. Then they will start targeting other ISKCON centers in other places, in other parts of the world, and it will become like these religious warfares. But you don't have a history of these kind of things. We are supposed to appeal to those who can effectively stop these things in society. You can see how Prabhupada dealt with the problems in establishing ISKCON Juhu. At one time, they were demolishing the temple. They were catching the ladies by the hair and dragging devotees, Western devotees. We're doing all kinds of things. What did Prabhupada do? He contacted Bal Thackeray. Do what is required for protection. Not that you yourself take it as much as possible. Prabhu,
in such cases, I have been asked this question that the devotees who suffer or who physical loss or monetary loss, who are facing the sufferings, what wrong they have done that it's been happening with them? And then when I say
that Krishna knows these things. But first of all, this world is a miserable world. These things were always happening. These things were always happening. It is an unfortunate piece of news that Dukhalayam Ashashvatam is not going to become Sukhalayam Ashashvatam because I have started to chant Hare Krishna. There is a Shukalayam Shashvatam, but that is called Vaikuntha. And even though my mind hates this news, because I want instant conversion of this Dukhalayam Ashashvatam into Sukhalayam Shashvatam, Krishna is not going to say yes to it. So we have to understand.
And when we tell that Lord is like it's all laws of karma which is taking care of things, so then people are like they retaliate sometimes that they are devotees, how there is karma, and why Lord is not protecting.
We are not engaged in pure devotion service. We are not engaged in pure devotion service. So what is the big surprise if I get this kind of things? First of all, we should understand that when we engage in the activity of propagating Krishna consciousness, we are going through we are accepting a great risk. You see, Prahlad Maharaj, he's an innocent 5-year-old boy, presenting in a very non-violent fashion. And you see all the trouble that he is subjected to. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, all of this, each and every follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should be ready to face. That's what it means to become a preacher of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. All of this will happen. Why it will not happen? It's miserable only. It is miserable. At the same time, when we watch innocent people, what to speak of religious people, what to speak of spiritually religious people, and what to speak of spiritually religious people who have accepted Vedic authority, and what to speak of those who have accepted Vedic authority in that category and who are aiming at liberation, and what to speak of those who are personalists, Vaishnavas. So each one is more valuable than the one before it. So all of them need to be protected to whatever extent is possible. But the unfortunate reality is this world is miserable. It is not going to change. It is not going to change. But if I execute pure devotion service to Krishna, then Kleshagni, Shubhada, these things will be manifest in my life. My life means my life. If you execute, it will be manifested in your life. If tomorrow I change my mind and I think that, oh, now I'm a human being, it's Kali Yuga, what can I do? No, let me have some jolly time in impure devotional service or even activities outside of devotional service. Then I'm subjecting myself to all these attacks. The attacks may be attacks of material pleasure or it may be attacks of material displeasure. Material happiness, material unhappiness, both. From Krishna's perspective, both are distractions from our real activity of trying to get back to him. But nevertheless, saintly authorities dislike pain, people being subjected to pain. So it is not just because Hare Krishna people are disturbed there that therefore we have to be worried. We have to be worried even if the non-Hare Krishnas are being disturbed because they are also Krishna's children. So it is our duty that at least within our circle of influence, we prevent whatever could be the seed causes of such disturbances. And of course, because these are our own brothers and sisters who are suffering in Bangladesh or wherever else, it's a duty to take them, shelter them, help them. In the 90s, there was a war in Europe that led to, I think, the creation of some of these small East European countries. I remember the names Bosnia, Herzegovina, a complete war. It's just war. People simply bombing each other. And I remember reading about two European devotee ladies who especially became interested in book distribution and prasadam distribution at that time, during the war. These are Hare Krishna devotees, full-time devotees. So that was a matter of great surprise. They go for book distribution, prasadam distribution. You don't even know whether they'll come back alive. Still, no. You have to distribute Prabhupada's books. This world is to Khalayama Shashvatam. So chant Hare Krishna. Directly they will say that. Take these books, read Bhagavatam. Similarly, there are devotees who are, as we are talking, the Ukrainian devotees in the Bhakti-vaibhava Book Trust are right now working on the Ukrainian edition of Srimad Bhagavatam. And when they were asked, what is this? You're sitting in this war zone. The whole world is lamenting. And you people are just going on as if life is cool. You're just, working on Ukrainian translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. They said, what war? So what if there is war? That doesn't mean that people don't experience birth, death, old age, and disease. Yes, some of us have died, some of us have been injured, and some of us have lost our property. And Some of the devotees are completely devastated. Some devotees are completely indifferent. All householders. No, we know these things. But we also know that there is something which will put an end to all of this in the individual lives of the people. That is Krishna consciousness as taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when we look at something like that, we understand, okay, here are the people that we should be following. This is what I should be following. Otherwise, I'm simply bothered about eating, sleeping, mating, different things, and all these things. It's ordinary things which we exaggerate in our heads. Okay, let's move on. 12. Naishkarmyanopyachita bhavavarjitam. Na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam. Kutah punah shashwadna bhadramishware na chapitam karma yadapya karanam. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? As referred to above. Okay, sorry. Bhakti hinam karma shunyam eva iti kainutya-nyayena darshayati. Naishkarmyam iti. The current text reveals that karma or engagement in varna dharma, ashrama dharma, stri dharma, and samanya dharma is useless without bhakti to Lord Krishna. And this is so obvious. This should be so obvious. That is the point of this verse. Nishkarma Brahma. Tad eka akaratva. Nishkarmata rupam naishkarmya. The word naishkarmya that is used here refers to the realization of Brahman. Brahman has only one state, one form, one state of existence. Matter goes on changing, but spirit doesn't change. Spirit is the same. So Naishkarmya refers to realization of it. Niranjanam indicates Niranjanam, free from designations. It refers to being freed from the material conditionings. So when we engage in cultivation of knowledge that is devoid of material designations, that is pure cultivation of knowledge. That means it is the attempt to attain spiritual realization without any attempt to attain material happiness. So even if one cultivates knowledge of that type, but he does not, that practitioner does not engage in devotional service unto Lord Achyuta, then that does not look good. In other words, it is not capable of producing realization. One might have, see, there is knowledge, there is understanding, there is realization. Protavya, mantavya, nididhyasatavya. And then there's darshana. Protavya indicates that one should study or one should hear the Vedic scriptures, theoretical knowledge. Mantavya refers to contemplating on the meaning of what one has studied. Understanding. Nididhyasitavya means one should meditate on those meanings. And then one is revealed, that content of what he had studied is revealed. So that revelation, that is called aparoksha jnana, direct realization. It is not indirect. Indirect means like a blind man. He may be living in a house since his birth for 30 years. So he knows everything about his house. But he knows everything indirectly. And if somebody else is in that house who's not blind, that non-blind person has direct knowledge of the house, which the blind person does not have. So direct realization is called aparoksha jnana, also called aparokshya. So cultivation of knowledge, if it is devoid of devotional service to Lord Achyuta, cultivation of theoretical knowledge and understanding, it will not bring about realized knowledge. So then what to speak about kamya karma, just ordinary activities of dharma, which are optional. First of all, it is inauspicious. From the spiritual perspective, it is inauspicious because it is simply misery. It is misery at all times. It is misery when one is performing them, and it is misery even when one's material desires are fulfilled. So from the spiritual perspective, it is always considered to be miserable. Yadapya karanam akamyam tacha iti chakarasya anvaya. The word cha here indicates also. It has a sense of also or etc., which implies that even the other types of Vedic dharma, other types of activities in karma dharma, that means it is not kamya karma, but it is vihita karma. There are three types of activities that are generally discussed. Let me just note it down here. Where is it? Notepad takes time. Okay, notepad is come here. There is Hita karma, prescribed activities. Anya karma, authorized activities, allowed activities, desirable activities. People can desire, allowed to desire to perform them. Then Nishiddha karma, prohibited activities. Generally, in Vedic dharma, we are attracted to kamya karma, activities which are allowed. When you engage in, say someone gets married, then they have certain prescriptions, they have certain prohibitions, and they have certain allowances. Some allowances are there. If you want, then you can become rich, for instance. But if you accept this kamya karma, then you have a new set of vihita karma, a new set of kamya karma, and a new set of nishiddha karma. If you are a householder and you become rich, then you have certain prescribed duties. You have to use that money in charity for certain auspicious spiritual causes, etc. You are not allowed to misuse that money. Then there is another kami karma option available inside that. So in that way it goes on. And if you accept that, then inside that again you get a new set of vihita karma, kamya karma, nishiddha karma. It goes on. Like a householder, first of all, married life itself is optional according to Srimad Bhagavatam. So if one marries itself, then that itself is kamya karma. And then he is supposed to carry out the duties of household life. He has certain prohibitions. He has to avoid that. And let's say kamya karma. If he wants, he can accept another wife. But if he accepts another wife, then there's a new set of vihita karma, kamya karma, nishiddha karma inside it. He should treat both of his wives equally. He should not do certain things. And like that, another set of allowances. So this is a Vedic web of delusion. There's kamya karma, kamya karma, kamya karma. It goes on inside. So there are activities outside of kamya karma, which are just obligations and prohibitions. So since kamya karma is inauspicious from the perspective of those who are seeking liberation, certainly even the activities of allowed dharmic activities are correctly understood to be actually miserable. Okay, but even if you had to set aside, when you look at the other activities, you observe the prescriptions and prohibitions. Even that, if you do not offer to the Supreme Lord, then that does not look good. It does not shine. It does not shine means it is averse to devotion service to the Supreme Lord because it does not purify the mind. If we do not engage in material activities for the sake of attaining pious credits, and we do not want pious credits, or we want pious credits, but we do not want to become renounced and detached. And even if we want to become renounced and detached, we do not want to attain love of Godhead, then those activities will not produce purification of mind. That means we will still be stuck with lust, anger, greed, and similar gross anarthas. That is indicated here. As referred to above, not only ordinary literatures devoid of transcendental glorification of the Lord are condemned, but also Vedic literatures and speculation on the subject of impersonal Brahman when they are devoid of devotion service. When speculation on the impersonal Brahman is condemned on the above ground, then what to speak of ordinary fruitive work which is not meant to fulfill the aim of devotion service? Such speculative knowledge and fruitive work cannot lead one to the goal of perfection. Fruitive work, in which almost all people in general are engaged, is always painful, either in the beginning or at the end. It can be fruitful only when made subservient to the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that unless the results of such fruitive work are offered for the service of the Lord, they lead to material bondage. In other words, I need to make an arrangement to move from Gunibhuta Bhakti to Pradhanibhuta Bhakti to Kevala Bhakti in purity. So either from Gunibhuta Bhakti, I move to Pradhanibhuta Bhakti, impure Pradhanibhuta Bhakti. Gunibhuta Bhakti is impure. Gunibhuta Bhakti is impure. So from impure Gunibhuta Bhakti, I move to impure Pradhanibhuta Bhakti. Then I move to pure Pradhanibhuta Bhakti and then pure Kevala Bhakti. That is one way. Another way is from Gunibhuta Bhakti, I move to impure Pradhanibhuta Bhakti. Then I move to impure Kevala Bhakti. Then I move to pure Kevala Bhakti. That is also. But one must have such a pathway of moving forward. One should have that, and one should always be endeavoring to see which is the easiest possible way, fastest possible way to move up. So if we have that, then one can accept such engagement of Gunibhuta Bhakti as something which can be used. Otherwise, it will simply drag us down. It will not purify us. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's okay. The bona fide enjoyer of the fruitive world is a personality of Godhead. And thus, when the results of such work are engaged for the sense gratification of the living beings, those results become acute sources of trouble for such false enjoyers. Okay, one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to rework on the schedule. Right now, as of now, to calculate how much content to be completed in every session, I have certain PDFs. And, oh, sorry, what did I do? Sorry. I have used certain PDFs and I have calculated 5 pages of that PDF content. But I'm thinking of reworking on the schedule using 4 pages of that content. It will increase the number of days, but at least I think I'll be able to complete it within schedule. Right now, I'm using the buffer days, but I'm a little bit apprehensive that they may all be used up. Okay, I thought there was some question. Okay, can we use bribe money in the service of the Lord if someone donates it to the temple? Bribe money, black money. I was told that this kind of black money, when it was donated, Prabhupada would just use it for deity service. That is what I was told. Because if we use it for devotees, it may have an effect. It may have an effect on their Krishna consciousness. A person like Prabhupada will not be affected by it. We know that. But persons who are not capable of handling all those reactions will have problems. Mohan Radhavati Group.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, in previous paper we read that people in general want to read, but and so like at that nowadays people even don't want to read, like even
No, that's not true.
bad
That's not true.
literatures.
That's not true. That's not true. That is simply not true.
Oh.
It's not true.
Okay.
People read. People read a lot. People in India also are reading a lot. People are reading. Who's saying they're not reading? If you want to be rich, if you want to come up in life, you'll find people telling these kind of things. If you want to come up in life, you should read at least 100 books. Tell all these things. They're all commonly advised. The reading, first of all, activates your brain, makes you think. So it is not a fact that they don't. They certainly read. They certainly read. No doubt about all this.
They're more interested in videos, at least for the youths which we see here, colleges. So much there's so much time they spend in watching videos, and also is it advisable to produce more video content?
Audio-visual experiences or immersive experiences, which is soon coming, is all coming. They will certainly be attractive to the vast majority of people. But the vast majority of people are not anyway thinkers. The vast majority, everywhere, poor people are the majority. Rich people are never the majority. Either due to pious activities or due to hard work or intelligent, smart work. You have some goals in life and you want to accomplish it. That itself is indicative of at least Rajoguna. In Tamoguna, you don't even have a goal. You just live. You just live. Just go through life and experience it. So, if they don't read, first of all, what are they doing in a university in the first place? They have textbooks, certainly. They're reading. It's not that they don't read.
They even study from videos, we see. They study, they make notes from videos and they read and go like that. Nowadays, it's going on a lot.
That may be there, but there are also real printed books or digital books. People do read in all languages. People read. It has decreased, certainly. All over the world, reading has decreased. After all this digital media, this, that, reading has decreased. There's no doubt that the reading has decreased, but people still read because they know that you need to process your intellect if you want to accomplish goals. If you are not self-disciplined, you cannot achieve goals. So people do read. They do read. And these very people who may not be reading and all that, they themselves understand over time that we are just being bombarded and distracted by all these things which don't allow me to succeed in life. So just as, for instance, there is all this enslavement by the audiovisual. You also find, for instance, there are internet blockers. There are some software applications which stop the computers from accessing the internet. That is another big business, because they know that your own monkey mind is going to put you down. So you need to have this kind of software which will prevent you from stabbing yourself. So there are even some programs in which there are blocks. You cannot access software, you cannot access internet, you cannot access certain websites. And then they have emergency systems. Usually we all fall down through emergencies only. So there are emergency systems that if you're in an emergency, you press this button. But if you press this button, then you need to pay this much money to us. And even then people sign up for that. Even then they sign up. Because they say when you lose money, it hurts you. And when it hurts you, you understand it is bad for me. So there are people who accept those methods also. Because then they don't have money, and then their young, sweet sons and daughters come and ask for some candy, and they cannot give because they lost the money. They lost the money because they were watching some unnecessary website. And if they had only controlled themselves, then they could have made their daughters and sons happy. So it hurts. So they also know these things. In fact, those people are more serious about being self-disciplined and achieving goals, because it's a cutthroat world. If everybody is distracted, you cannot do anything actually. You cannot even make a movie if you are distracted by movies themselves. They know that. They know these things. Therefore, in many companies, they don't allow internet access only. They will give intranet access or something like that. They know. Achyutanam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So in purport to 11th verse, Srila Prabhupada said that if there is a change of heart of leaders only, certainly there will be radical change in the world atmosphere. But how to effect this change of heart of leaders? Like
When we
approaching
become
them.
pure, then we will be able to convince others. Where does he say?
In 11th verse, purport is like middle of the purport.
Which paragraph?
Yeah, there only, Prabhu. It went above, paragraph above.
Tell me the first three words of the paragraph.
Here in the book, it is all composite. It is starting from the beginning, this paragraph. The line
Tell
is
me the first.
if there is a change of heart.
Tell me the first three words of the paragraph.
It is a qualification. Yeah. It's way down, Prabhu. Actually. Few more.
Only by the leading men of the world, certainly there will be a change of heart, and naturally the people in general will follow them. Generally, we notice when those who are socially respectable accept something, then the rest of the population also has a tendency to follow it. in the Middle East, practically all the devotees are congregation devotees. And there also, if the leaders are if the congregation leaders are themselves highly placed and from the material perspective, highly successful, and they take to Krishna consciousness, then the rest of the people also feel like joining the congregation. So it is there everywhere.
So as you
Even
said that
student preaching, even why student preaching Prabhupada emphasizes, because students are possible leaders in the future. When educated people accept Krishna consciousness, then you affect the lives of dozens or even hundreds of uneducated people. You had something else to ask?
so the line which you said that if we become pure, we can convince others. That's the answer for this, to have this change of heart of leaders.
That is one preliminary requirement. Then we will also have to utilize their intelligence to help the leaders understand Krishna consciousness. Pranayar, Arthair, Dhiya, Vacha. These are the 4 elements of Lord Chaitanya's preaching mission. You require some who give their entire lives, as well as their money, as well as their intelligence, and as well as their communication abilities. Then you require some who are incapable of giving all these 4. So you require a second grade of participants in Lord Chaitanya's mission. They should be giving their money, their intelligence, and their communication abilities. Then you require a third grade of participants in the Lord's mission. Those who give their intelligence and their communication skills. And then you will require a 4th grade of participants in Lord Chaitanya's mission. Those who only use their communication skills. So we require all 4. These are perpetual requirements in spreading pure Krishna consciousness as taught by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Bro, communication skills means,
Sorry?
communication skills means like,
Vacha, by speech, by communication.
so like mouth publicity that this is good, Krishna consciousness is good.
Yeah,
like
at least at the very least they should think. If they are convinced that we are moral, spiritual, if they are convinced that we are helping people become better in every sense, then they will want to help. Even if they can't help, if they cannot be first class members of Lord Chaitanya's mission, then they can become second class members or third class members or fourth class members. Okay, we'll stop with this. But I am thinking of reworking on the schedule, which basically means that the amount of content that I will cover per session will reduce a little bit. It will be 80% of what I'm currently using. I'll test whether that is sufficient or not. If that also doesn't work, then I'll have to reduce even further. Okay. On Shankar Putra Vishya Pasant